This is how we drift race in the Akina Mountains, delivering tofu at top speeds, without spilling water. That's how we do. Whoa! Physics, what is it? Road trip. Not to be confused with Road Trip Shifting Gears, Road Trip Arcade Edition, or Road Trip Adventure Avenue. The latter of which was a planned North American name for a sequel to it that was otherwise known as Gadget Racers, which is not to be confused with the identically named Gadget Racers, and in spite of that, GameFAQs still has it listed as Road Trip for some reason? I don't know. Because collecting for this series is far more complicated than it has any right to be. Also, it has nothing to do with Rogue Trip on the PS1, a game I really need to play because that game was basically Crazy Taxi mixed with Twisted Metal, and I remember it being pretty good. But either way, as you can tell by the total lack of brand continuity with this game, this is a ChoroQ game. Yeah, you remember ChoroQ, that PS2 thing I talked about many years ago? Yeah, there's actually a few of these things, but, like, that was the only one that actually kept its name in English, because that makes sense. If you're not familiar, this is a brand tie-in sort of thing. ChoroQ is actually a series of wind-up toy cars you could get in Japan that were basically super deformed versions of real toy cars. The games date back to 1984 on the MSX, and there was actually quite a lot of them. I want to say something like 25 or so that came out. And a surprising number of them actually came out in North America. They just kind of lost the entire brand and went with weird names like Road Trip and Penny Racers and just other random nonsense that had nothing to do with anything except for what was effectively the third to last one, which was the only one that ever took its name in English. It's complicated is what I'm saying. Now, the plot to Road Trip is a very, very interesting one. There's tons of political intrigue. There's lots of plot development. It's very, very interesting. In a world where automation has caused the downfall of humanity, in this post-apocalyptic world, sentient carmobiles will rise. To the top of this hierarchy of carmobiles is President Forrest, because he's green. Well, one day he gets kind of bored of being president, so now he wants someone to win the Grand Prix and challenge him, and that's somehow how democracy works. Look, we live in a world where Donald Trump was somehow president. I'm still reeling from that. This makes more sense than anything I've heard in this real world, so you know what? Sure. Because that's how democracy in a world of carmobiles works, I guess. So, either way, this is the plot of the world's greatest tofu delivery, Torino, quickly becoming jet-powered and also a monster truck, because of course it is, and winning a whole bunch of races, starting a racing team, and doing some random nonsense, all to become president of Super Carmobile World. This game is awesome in terms of plot, is what I'm saying. Actually, it's very, very lacking in plot. There's basically no plot from point A to point B, but as the titular road trip kind of leads on, it's more about the journey than the destination. Now, the ChoroQ games in general are kind of weird because they come in like 3 different flavors. You either have games that are menu-based racing games, which I believe the original Gadget Racers on the PS2 was. Then you get giant open world games that also just sort of have racing on the side. And then you have games that are kind of like weird mini-game compilations. And Road Trip is kind of like if you mixed all 3 of those conceits together. It definitely leads most heavily into being a open world game, but it has a lot of weird side objectives, such as playing golfing and football with your car, which means that yes, ChoroQ did it well before Rocket League and they should start paying up, basically. But one way or another, you have to drive around solving all sorts of problems for people, taking on weird side quests, going to photo booths and getting your car's photo taken everywhere for reasons, collecting stamps, finding parts, collecting random coins to help some guy with his lifelong dream of being a coin collector, solving a kidnapping at one point, building your own town, collecting people, driving around, solving mysteries. This game is huge and it has tons of weird off-the-wall stuff you wouldn't necessarily expect. You know, what would it be in a racing game and stuff? In fact, it feels like the racing is just sort of tacked onto this weird open-world RPG adventure that just happens to take place in a car. And that's kind of cool. I will say it's not perfect. The giant open world is honestly got the same issues as Red Dead Redemption and Breath of the Wild. It's way too big for how little meaningful content there is. You can spend minutes driving around and not really see anything. There's huge areas of just nothing. It's not really beneficial to ever really leave the main roads, but there are tons of fun little side activities, trading quests, puzzles to solve. This game has tons of fun little adventures to go on and things to do in a really sizable world. I just wish the ratio to world size and content was a little bit more rich, you know, just because, while there is a lot of fun stuff to do and is well thought out for the most part, there really is just a huge amount of downtime between point A and point B. There's also a metric crap ton of customization. Every town you go to has a new store where you can buy new car parts. You can find parts by solving mysteries, completing challenges, as well as actually, you know, racing if that's your bag, I guess. You can create your own perfect super car mobile. You can pick your body, although again, once you find the Torino, why would you ever swap that? It's like the coolest car ever. You can change your engines, gear ratios, your inner frame to change your weight class. You can add jet thrusters, a police siren, a freaking glider to your roof for some reason, your horn, your speedometer. Basically everything about your super car mobile can be tailored to your own tastes. That said, there are some things that just don't feel quite right no matter how much you tune. I could not find anything that felt like it had a particularly good turning ratio. Driving cars felt very clumsy, especially turning, and when I tried doing a special challenge later on that I was having a lot of challenge with, if you've ever played the game, landing on a platform after flying through the air without falling off it, yeah, I could not do that one. And having to swap all my parts to try and find a better, like, equipment set so that I could better utilize my speed and stuff, it was really shocking how really awkward lower quality cars get. So, while it feels good to upgrade your car, it always feels a little bit like it doesn't handle quite right. Like, the turning needs to be just a little bit better than it always is, and that's a bit unfortunate. But you can change your car's color, you can change your car's appearance, you can change pretty much everything else to your car, to your specifications, and then, you know, take it on an adventure in the giant wilderness of Road Trip, and mostly not see stuff if you ever leave the road, but, you know, sometimes you'll find a photo booth and you can take a complimentary photo of the environment, go through races, and of course, do random nonsense like racing kings to not fall in the water or go through a crazy maze underwater, and despite the fact it looks like there are holes beneath you, there aren't holes, don't worry about that. There is so much to do in this game. Now you might have noticed that I haven't really talked about the racing yet, and there is a reason for that, and that is while the racing kind of works, there is one big issue, and that is track design is far from ideal, especially, again, going back to my problem with no vehicle really feeling like it turns right. For some reason, and I have no idea why, whoever designed the tracks really had a fetish for 90-degree angle turns, because there are just 90-degree angle turns pretty much in every track. And you should not have those kind of turns in any kind of racing game, let alone one where you're constantly struggling against being able to turn properly. This is bad, and the AI cars will get stuck on it constantly, which is nice because you get a bunch of DNFs versus your own struggles against it, but at the same time, if your AI has issues trying to navigate the course you've plotted out, you might want to revise that, because your own AI should not have troubles with it, and it does, a lot. But each race course does have its own hazards, which requires you to sometimes swap up your gear. Sometimes you might want jet skis so that you can better go over the water, because water sucks in this game. Or an underwater submarine module. Or you could throw on the jet afterburners so that you can just fly over the nonsense, because this game's physics is a little weird. If you hit a jump, you're going to go flying into the sky, and there's not really much you can do about it. But it does let you skip the water portion, so appreciate that. Sometimes you can just back up a mountain, because for some reason reversing ignores physics, and just in general physics feels more like a suggestion than a hard rule, and that's kinda nice, honestly, except when it messes with you and completely throws off your racing game, then it really sucks. But you know, it's always interesting to see the way the physics kind of glitch out and mess up. The physics are not done with any degree of competency, and it really does feel like this is a budget game from that. But at the same time, it's kind of part of its charm as well. ChoroQ is, if nothing else, a game about heart, more than it, you know, being super well made. And yeah, you could argue that's basically just a low quality, cynical cash-in to sell you some toy cars. If you ever wanted to spend $50 on a wind-up toy Torino, And yes, I have thought about it. Thank you for asking. But while this game is basically here to just sell you the toys, it's a fun game in and of itself. It's not super well polished, but it has a lot of fun little weird events that just more than make up for it and create a really unique, if not completely surreal experience in a post-apocalyptic world where all that's left is sentient super carmobiles. And that's gotta be worth something. Now there is one aspect of this game mechanically that is extra peculiar, and that's in a world that's constantly trying to fling you into space because physics. And that is that it's kind of a team racing game. And you might have noticed that up to this point I haven't mentioned that, and that's because the game kind of forgets about that as well. Like, throughout the entire game you can solve all these like sub-quests for people and add them to your party. You can have a team of, with yourself included, up to 3. And you can actually customize your teammates' cars as well, but you can't change their body. It's the one thing you can't do, which is unfortunate. But like, all they serve to do is have 2 other racers in any race with you, and if they do well you get a little money. And it's nice that you can name your own currency in this game. They're just not there for any real reason, and the weird thing is the AI for your teammates seems just really wildly incompetent, and it feels like it's something that wasn't really supposed to really work in this game. And you know, it's fine that the game kind of forgets that that's an entire mechanic, except that once you finally unlock the ability to do the Grand Prix at the end, then it becomes a points-based team sport, and your teammates have to be properly equipped and do well if you want to succeed, because if your team doesn't get enough points to come in first, you fail. And granted, you can retry it as many times as you like, but to basically be reliant on your teammates no matter how well equipped, basically being left to chance, that's not good at all. And I'll make fun of this game for its awkward physics, and I will say that some of these weird side events, like landing on the platform without falling off, and the lava tightrope nonsense, are awful and badly made, and you're constantly fighting against the game itself to try and make these work, especially the physics in those situations. But you know what? I think those are still charming, goofy, interesting things you can try and do with your car, and you know, that's fun. Trying to rely on AI which can DNF in races in order to get points for a team score? Yeah, don't like that so much. It also should be noted that there's kind of a weird fuel mechanic to this game. Like, your car has fuel, it's an expendable resource, and while you're on the road, pretty much any place you stop will automatically refill it. That's fine. But in a race, there's not really a way to recover fuel, except on one track where you can pit. However, weirdly enough, there are 2 races on this track, but only one of them will actually ever let you refuel. It's very strange. And the weirdest thing of all is it feels like this entire fuel consumption mechanic shouldn't even be present, because it doesn't even feel like it's there until you're like all the way done your first loop of the island doing the easiest races, when you finally get some better stuff and your engines start kicking in and you know, you're burning more and more fuel. Because at that point it gets really exorbitant. Traveling becomes a pain, and while there is a quick travel system kind of get you around all that stuff, if you just want to drive on the road, you kind of just have to look for pit stops every like 10 feet or so. Even more so when you get the jet afterburners, because who'd have guessed jet engines kind of take a lot of fuel. But like, it just becomes really awkward to go from a game that feels like it has no fuel economy to one where you're kind of getting beaten over the head with it. It feels very inconsistent, and once it finally does hit you, it hits hard and it does not go away. I'm not the biggest fan of that, honestly. It feels kind of weirdly balanced by that point, because on the front end, it's never an issue. And then suddenly it is an issue, and you might be completely confused as to what's going on, because it's not even clear this is a present mechanic until you get hit with it. And no character in the game actually explains that this is happening, and not even on the UI is it consistently present that you can see your fuel levels. That's not good design. Overall, this is a game of heart more than technical aptitude, more than anything. It is a game about weird, super deformed cars trying to become president, alright? This is more a game about its concept and what it's trying to do and how ambitious it is in terms of the various events it sets up, more than its aptitude. And in that regard, it's a lot of fun. Yeah, the races and the physics can be a bit frustrating. Yeah, the team AI is just flat out bad, and yeah, some of the side objectives are more frustrating than anything, but you know, it gives you a series of events that will be very memorable if nothing else. Playing this game has definitely stuck with me, and it is definitely a very memorable game, gameplay-wise. The overall presentation to Road Trip is kind of middle of the road, in the sense that visually it's quite good. It goes for a very stylized look. I do appreciate how bright and colorful the world is. I love the customization, and I do love that every house you go into to talk to all the cars, they all have something unique about them. Sometimes there's like little secrets and stuff in the background that can give you hints on little missions and stuff you can do as well, which is really, really cool. The visuals to this game, you know, for what is effectively feeling like a budget title, are really top notch. They lean very heavily into their strengths of being hyper stylized, and it paid off in spades. What's not so good though is the audio design. Don't get me wrong, the bright, jaunty music is quite good, but, and you're probably listening to this right now, it has one serious problem. There's no way to separate the engine sound from the background music, so you can't actually listen to it without hearing your car over top of it, and the engine tuning is very, very loud. I have no idea what I'm going to do for background music for this game, but getting background audio for this is going to be off. It's just so hard to hear over the engine noise, and there's no way to separate the two. They're both just covered in the total of sound in the menu for some reason, which is not ideal, especially when you're trying to record this or, you know, present this game, you know? It's nice to listen to the music and not have to hear a stupid engine over top of it. Overall, the visuals are great. The audio has one serious issue to it, but if they could just have gotten rid of that and like been able to separate the engine background audio from the actual music, it would be a lot better. Now, if you want a copy of Road Trip on the PS2, not to be confused with Road Trip Arcade Adventure, Road Trip Shifting Gears, and of course, Road Trip Adventure Avenue, which was also Gadget Racers, not to be confused with Gadget Racers, not to be confused with like the other 6 versions of Gadget Racers. Collecting for this series is way too hard. I mean, at least the Japanese versions, it numbered each of these iterations on the PS2, except they didn't because the last one isn't, because even that can't be simple. I have no idea why, but I love this series. Cheapest one I'm seeing on eBay right now is about $50, which is a bit much. Again, this game feels kind of budget-y. I still think it's probably one of the best ChoroQ games I've played, but it's got some serious issues, and for $50, that's asking for quite a lot. Now, if you're in the PAL territories, you can actually get a significantly cheaper version. For some reason, the NTSC versions are just a lot more expensive. So, you know, if you've got a European PS2, you've got a better chance of being able to play this game. And, you know, you can play the sequel to this, which, from what I've played of it, feels a little bit better paced in terms of content for the size of the world, but this game has a significantly bigger, more ambitious world, and to be fair, I kind of enjoy that, but I think the pacing and amount of content for that size of the world is just not justified. The racetracks are a bit jank. Like I said before, this isn't a game about technical aptitude. It feels like a budget game, but it has heart, and it was a lot of fun to be able to play this on stream, and you better go watch it because it's quite enjoyable. But either way, I look forward to doing more ChoroQ games. The first one I ever played that I reviewed many, many years ago now, that one stuck with me, and it made me want to play the rest. And I mean, I've actually gone out and gotten the PAL exclusive third one on the PS2, and I've got the first one, and I've got one on the Saturn, and I've got one of the Game Boy Color games. I really want to collect them all, just because this series, while it might not be the fastest feeling and the steering is not good at all, it's just a really, really fun series with some fun, goofy times and a lot of heart, and it made quite a special impression on me. Okay, we're doing okay so far. Whoa! That's fine, that's fine, that's fine, we're okay. And this one's straight shot, so we should be able to just go down. Okay, this one scares me because you can't see where you're going. I really hate these downward ramps. Okay. What? Oh, I don't understand.